Good morning, everyone. I'm Chong-Anna, the Director of Development for the Michigan State University Museum. I'm very sorry that I can't physically be there with you today for our session. However, if the travel gods shine upon me today, I should be at the conference later this morning, and I would welcome dialoguing with anyone with an interest in this topic, especially if you're committed to solutions-oriented discussion about this work. I'd love to hear from you over the next few days of the conference, and then hopefully later through a network or interest group that I hope results from this panel. Before I start, I do want to say thank you to Dr. Janetta Cole for facilitating this panel, and to Arthur Affleck for getting us and keeping us on task, and to Dr. Mark Oslander, the director of the MSU Museum, for his unwavering commitment as a museum director to this work of decolonizing fundraising, both as a profession and as a practice towards donor identification, cultivation, and stewardship. As you know, the bedrock of fund development is relationships, and despite sustained efforts by museums and nonprofits of almost every stripe, fundraising as a profession and as a practice towards donors remains a space with a distinct lack of diversity. And that deficiency excludes people of color and those from traditionally marginalized communities from holding leadership roles as gift officers and leadership roles as major donors. Again and again, it is a problem that we often don't name because it is so common. In large gatherings of fund development professionals, it is rare that you will see more than one or a handful of people of color. And in large gatherings of major arts and cultural donors, in almost any given community, it is not uncommon to see the same faces again and again, and those gatherings rarely include more than a few people of color. And so we as leaders need to ask ourselves some uncomfortable and tough questions. Why is it that year after year we are barely moving the needle? Or as Dr. Oslander probably shared earlier in his presentation, are even losing ground when it comes to recruiting and retaining talented staff of color and of other diverse backgrounds? Why is it that year after year our new donor pool, our volunteer base, and our boards so often resemble our current donor pool? What practices and organizational structures are we following that unintentionally exclude those who aren't, quote unquote, in the club? Our challenges remain invisible until we start to unpack and examine them. One challenge is to examine and make changes to our workforce development, our hiring, retention, and professional development practices. The other challenge is to examine and change how we go about building relationships with our donors and prospective donors, and to enlarge the circle of participation. What patterns of practice and hiring practices result in limiting our talent pool in fundamental ways? And how do we structure our workplace in ways that lessen chances that we will attract and retain people of color and people of varied backgrounds? And what are we willing to do to grow and nurture the talent pool and steer people towards being part of the revolution? I'll use myself as an example of someone that 20 years ago never expected that my career would involve becoming a major gift officer, and I didn't follow a traditional path to this work. But I spent time building a career centered on social justice and serving others, and managed to acquire the skill set necessary to become a major gift officer by working in various roles with political campaigns, nonprofits, and even state government. If you were to look at my resume over the years, you'd see someone who has dealt with building and analyzing massive databases through the work of political voter contact and community organizing for local, state, and congressional races, someone who's pursued massive discretionary grants in a senior role as workforce development director, overseeing the state of Michigan's dislocated worker unit during the nation's massive financial recession. I served as an economic development board member, a graduate level teaching assistant, and as a peer counselor to fellow minority students at a white majority university. In addition to serving in more traditional fundraising roles, such as doing compliance and reporting and finance director positions. The common thread that runs throughout my career is a passion for justice, for building community, for transformational philanthropy, And there are thousands of women and men from varied backgrounds right now that are just like I was. People working as organizers, who are philanthropic themselves and involved in their communities as volunteers, who simply haven't been asked. Have you ever thought about being a fundraiser? About being a philanthropic matchmaker that helps people make their dreams come true? Some of the small yet powerful things that we can do to change the game when it comes to growing and diversifying our workforce is not to just say that we are welcome, that we are a welcoming workplace and that we value diversity, and then sit back and wait for the stampede of people from diverse backgrounds to come knocking on our door, but to knock on their doors and ask them to change the world with you. Make an effort to be in relationship with them. Offer yourself up as a mentor for an early career fundraiser through your community's local Association of Fundraising Professionals chapter. Volunteer to come and speak at your local public schools career days. Show up at minority career fairs at colleges. Speak to Hispanic and Black chambers of commerce events. We can make special effort to raise our visibility in affinity groups by consistently showing up and letting people know that holding positions in charitable, mission-driven work is attainable, honorable work. And the other important piece is that once we attract fundraisers is that we invest in their professional development and growth. The other important piece to address is that examining and changing the practices we use to identify, qualify, cultivate, solicit, and steward donors. The tough questions we need to ask ourselves are, how are we spending our time when it comes to prospect development? Are we serving different groups of donors in ways that exclude some groups and not others from opportunities to climb the pyramid of engagement in meaningful ways? Are we taking time to test assumptions about a prospective donor and spending the time with them to engage them meaningfully? Are we being transactional and not donor-centric in our stewardship? Are we relying too much on our current donor base and not investing in or doing enough discovery and prospecting work? Are we measuring and analyzing our donor base in a way that measures different kinds of diversity, age, gender, class, geography, industry, so on? As we do the work of recognizing our implicit and explicit biases and the destructive and counterproductive practices that result from them, we simultaneously need to recognize our own often complicated relationship and feelings about money and great wealth and what it means to us. Edgar Villanova, a Native American former Major Foundation Program gift officer, wrote in his fantastic new book, Decolonizing Wealth, that contrary to popular belief, the saying is not, money is the root of all evil, but that love of money is the root of all evil. When used as a tool for justice and for charity and the common good, money can be medicine, and we could all benefit from some good medicine. Thank you, and I hope we get a chance to talk more about best practices related to this topic in other sessions in this week and in the future.